Hi, Lotta Forssman?
Yes.
Forssman?
Forssman. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this interview, this casual podcasty thing we're trying to do.
Thanks for having me.
Do you wanna intro yourself? Just give us a story of your life.
Sure. I'm from Sweden. Born and raised, have been in New York now for 10, 11 years, I think. I'm a visual effects supervisor at the Molecule. And what else should I say? That was kind of like the shortest version of my life.
I remember when I was comping at the Molecule, when I first showed up, I remember you were an editor there when you first started there, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how did that transition work, or how did you even get? Were you just a traditional editor and then became a VFX editor and then just moved your way up to VFX supervisor?
It's a little bit of a crazy path. So I went to school for video production with a minor in film in Ohio. I ended up going back to Sweden after college and got an internship at a production company. I worked on a studio game show and was really into production design at that time. That's what I thought I would want to do. I want to design sets. I want to, I thought that I was maybe going into architecture and building sets, and that was my plan. The producer there, she sat me next to the editor and was like, absolutely, you can sit in all the production design meetings, everything like that. I feel like you would do really good in post. Here you go, So I sat with the editor, helped him out, did a lot of overnight shifts. And in college, I had also done a lot of editing and also some animation and motion graphics, mostly After Effects. And that's kind of what I ended up doing in a lot of the student films. So I wasn't very unfamiliar with it. But then after that internship ended, I got another internship at a place that did a lot of music videos and commercials. Ended up again doing editing, Final Cut at that time, and a lot of motion graphics. And started a little bit in dabbling into visual effects and comping, mostly in After Effects, but did my first keys and things like that. And after that, I had a green card, and the green card runs out after being out of the States for a year. So I kind of had to decide, should I stay or should I go? Always wanted to live in New York, packed my bags, went, and found, again, I think a paid internship at that point, at another place that did mostly visual effects. So that's where I started going a little bit from After Effects and a little bit into Nuke. And for a while, I was working at a few places where I did freelancing, where I did After Effects work, Final Cut edits, nothing big. It was a lot of web videos and small little pieces and then a lot of taxi cab commercials that you saw.
Commercials for taxi cabs?
Yeah, no, like inside the Bon Appetit and magazine and little web videos and stuff like that I did. But I ended up going more and more into the visual effects route and landed a nighttime roto shift gig at the Molecule, I think 11 years ago now, and started off as their roto artist and was comping, as a junior artist there for a while. But when then they found out that I also knew After Effects and Final Cut, I ended jumping back and forth between their motion graphics department and comping. So I did both. Mm-hmm. When projects started getting, busier and they needed a VFX editor, that's when I started doing more of the VFX editing, coordinating at the Molecule. And ended up more in the managerial and organizational part of the company. And then I worked my way up to a VFX supervisor. I produced for a while, did coordinating, producing, and then I ended up going out on set. So it's a little bit of a crazy route, but yeah, I just always, you know, I was always really into visual effects. And even though I got pushed into it a little bit in the beginning, you know, 12 years ago at that internship, being by a computer, I always just wanted to learn more, wanted to know more, and had a passion about it.
Awesome. That's such like a, I feel like you just outlined in such granularity exactly what your path is. I feel like I've never heard somebody like explain it so specifically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm explaining my life in 2 sentences to
Yeah.
going into detail what I did week per week.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The how different is it now versus how it was when you like first started at the molecule? Like it's a very broad, but it's like an umbrella question. Like what do you think is like so fundamentally different from how things used to work all the way back then to how they are now?
Oh, at the molecule or in the
Just in
industry in general?
general, just in general, yeah. You can, I mean, you can talk about the molecule, but anywhere really.
I mean, I think it's been such a, you know, honor and really amazing to be with a company as it grows and being able to grow with it. So the company has changed a lot, you know, it's a lot of the same people, which I think is really nice because you know, some people have been there as long as I have, a lot of people have. And it's been amazing to see that company grow and been in 3 different offices, now remote, and being with it as it's getting bigger projects, more projects, and that has been tremendous to see it change, you know, and just to see it evolve. The industry itself, I feel like, I mean, it's ever changing. You know, there's always something new, and there's always some new technology and some new you know, softwares. I remember I was like, I need to learn Shake when I first started,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And so there's always ever changing things, which I think is what makes this industry fun, because as you know, everybody needs to keep up and everybody needs to keep learning and growing with it. You know, no one's going to ever be all knowing because there's always something new in the horizon, new technology, you know, this whole Unreal and virtual production that's coming now, and people, you know, learning different tools, which is good. You know, you just got to keep up.
Yeah, let's talk about COVID. So let's talk about, I mean, so
Oh,
there's
with
we have like virtual production. There's kind of real-time technologies are starting to take off, cloud-based stuff happening,
Yep.
and then on top of that, you have COVID going on.
Yep.
So those are the kind of like the three or four pillars of like uncertainty that's happening in the industry, right? I
Yeah.
guess the question, the thing I always talk about is like COVID obviously is kind of like pushing all of these things.
Yeah.
Like virtual production's been around kind of for a little bit prior to all of this. Real-time technologies, obviously GPU accelerated things.
I mean, and we were even shooting before COVID. You know, like things.
Yeah.
We're going, you know, in a direction. I think definitely COVID is speeding some things up, especially when we're with remote working.
How do you like it?
I'm an office person, and I like that it's a possibility now. I think for a lot of people, it is a great, you know, it's great to be able to work from home, and some people work better from home. Me personally, I miss the office. I miss going and talking to people and making the rounds and seeing what's on people's screen and things like that. I feel like I'm lucky because I get to go out on set. So I get some of that, you know, interaction with people regardless, even though it's changed a lot since pre-COVID. But I do miss the office culture. I miss a little bit of that camaraderie and the ease of communication that we don't always have to schedule a call now. You know, like before you could just go and do a 2-minute chat with a person if you had like an additional note. Now it's more of like, hey, you know, is it a good time to talk? Let's talk about the shot. Where are you at? So it's a little bit more like planned, and you have to be more planned. You can't just call people or you know, screen share out of the blue. You have to, you know, talk to people, and then you also have to. I feel like it's a little hard to separate work and non-work now, because you know, you wake up and your office is right there, you know, and then before it's like, okay, it's 7, I gotta go home, but now you can kind of go in to the, you know, by your computer and you can work. It's easier to work late, I think. I end up working a lot later
Yeah,
now.
no, for sure. Because you have to, because before there was like a physical delineation where like, okay, like it's this o'clock, I have to go home.
Yeah, or like,
So you
yeah,
just do it, and then there's just kind of a physical separation. But now, but you are home, so you have to just make the decision to end it,
yeah,
you know? Like I had like there's like a few things like from working remotely, there's just like a few weird problems that have come up. Like one time I just like left my phone in the kitchen or something, and like I got called 7 times and I just didn't know. I just left my
Yeah.
phone somewhere. I didn't think it was like tragic. But it's not, there was, you know, there was just something that needed to happen in like 10 seconds, and
yeah.
I didn't think anything of it. I just didn't have my phone on me. So that's a very natural thing, but and I don't know, and it's almost like I don't know how you fix that because I can't promise anybody that I'm gonna be a perfect human being that never loses anything or never forgets anything. Like I can't operate on that level, close, but not on that, not exactly at that level.
I think that there should be more an understanding from clients or people that like expect you to do that. That you're not working from an office,
Yeah.
and yes, you might forget your phone somewhere. I mean,
Yeah,
I do it all the time.
yeah.
Um,
Like we,
people usually call me like um, 3,000 times or send me 3,000 messages. I hope that doesn't happen to you, Laura, though. Did that
Oh,
ever happen?
that people send a lot of messages and calls. I mean, it does, you know, it definitely, it's a, yeah, it's a different way of working. And I think everybody has to adjust, you know, because at the same time, you also need to get your work done as an artist. So that's why I don't, you know, want to just constantly message you, because I need to give you space to like finish the shot. But sometimes I'm like, where are you with the shot? Like, you know, just checking in there needs to be a balance, because I need to, you know, you need to be able to check in with people, but they also need to continue working. And it was easier when you could do like a little round in the office and you just saw what's up on the
yeah.
screen, and you saw, you know, that, oh, that's looking really good, I'm gonna leave her or him be. You know, like it was just a little bit of a different way of being able to supervise. So you have to now adjust to that when you're supervising remotely. So you
There,
feel like you have an overall whereabouts of where the project and where all the shots stand without, like you said, bothering somebody. You know, you got to let people work, and also respect the work-life balance that you, now that work is in your life. It's things to adjust, but I am happy that this is now also, I think that working remotely is going to exist. It's going to exist for a while, but even, you know, if we go back to more office culture, working from home is going to be something that's you know, accepted, which I think is so great, you know, when, you know, when you have families and when you have other situations where you just need to maybe be home, and now it's going to be more accepted.
yeah. So actually, so moving on to this question, like how, like everybody seems to agree that it's going to stick around to some degree. Like we're not just going to go completely back. So
Yeah.
how do you think that's going to materialize? Like I was talking to Clint Chang in another interview prior to this, and he was saying that like PsyOp and like a lot of other companies, I'm sure, are kind of adopting this model where like they're becoming very open to having remote kind of distributed teams,
Yeah.
and they kind of want to go with that. So how do you feel about that? Do you think that's a thing?
I think it's going to be a thing. I think it's going to stick, you know, like me personally, I hope that there will be an office. I don't think it's going to be an office is not going to look like it used to look. You know, it's not going to be a pit just filled with artists and everybody sitting right next to each other working. I think that, you know, there's going to be some change that's going to stick. And I think that some companies are going to be fully remote for a very, very long time and keep that, because why pay rent if you know, to a huge space where everybody needs to commute in and spend time commuting in, if you can have, you know, a very functional, efficient remote, you know, workspace. I think eventually it would be a hybrid. And some companies, out of security reasons, I'm sure will go back to fully in office, and some might stay fully remote. And hopefully, I'm hoping to work a little bit on a hybrid where you can have a little office and a screening room. And, you know, that's what I probably miss the most, like being able to go in and look at things with everybody and talk about it with an artist and just have dailies and not just look at it myself on my computer screen, you know?
Yeah. So here's an off-topic question. Are you eyeing any real estate?
What?
Are you eyeing any real estate? Now, all these offices are gonna, you know,
Oh,
there's all this there's all this cheap real estate now. What are,
yeah,
someone's gonna have to buy it. Are you trying to do
I
anything?
know. I mean, New York rents are going down, obviously, but I have not looked at commercial spaces. I'm sure that's going down pretty much too. It's a little bit of a different place than it was before COVID, for sure.
So what about you? Are you buying any real estate?
Not anytime soon, no. Actually, I think prices in New York for buying are still kind of high. The rent are going down, but
The
the
rent.
but I guess they expect the value of buildings and apartment to still, or offices to still be the same after COVID. So the prices are still kind of on the high side, in my opinion.
Mhm.
That's what
I'm
I
always,
think.
it seems like a dumb question, but I always think about this because, like, if you have, because this is not just like a VFX thing, like, if you have hybrid offices, that's pretty much everybody, right? Everyone can benefit from that kind of a model.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of real estate in Manhattan. That's a lot. Like, that's what's going to happen to that. Like, it's going to have to go somewhere. They're going to have to sell it to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, investment tips.
Yeah.
Don't take anything I say. Like, I'm not a financial analyst, and like I have to give, you know.
Today, anybody can be a financial analyst.
Yeah, no, exactly. With like Wall Street bets happening, like I don't want anybody to construe my advice as being like credible or anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah, I had
wild out there.
that day when that happened, I had a colleague on set come in and run in. I bought so much GameStop, and I was like, "What are you talking about?"
They're rich
Got
now.
rich so quick, but not super rich. But yeah, interesting. Interesting times in general. I'm not here to speculate too much in either real estate or finance, but yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
it's curious. The so virtual production. Have you been on virtual production sets?
No, so I mean, I have had a lot of clients talk about it, ask about it. You know, it's definitely been something that productions have wondered about, and so far I have not gotten anybody who, or a production where it's really fit the bill in terms of like virtual production in the term of shooting in a volume, you know, with the whole thing. Virtual production is a bunch of different things too. You know, you can use it for previs, you can use it for different things. But I did have one production that ended up liking, really wanting an LED wall. So we shot an 80-foot LED wall out, but it was used mainly as a backdrop. You know, it was a very internal show where it was set in a house, and instead of just having, you know, a standard backdrop print that with no movement, we ended up shooting plates in various different seasons, which was very nice, so that you can get the same view in multiple seasons, and day and night, and rain and snow, and you know, but it was a suburban street. It was cars driving by. There was no camera tracking. You know, it was, but it was an 80-foot LED screen that I worked with. We created content for. We shot a bunch of plates that we stitched together, and did some matte painting to get it into all these different, you know, looks that we wanted. And so it was a good start for and practice to work with these 80-foot walls and learn about them. But I have not yet worked on what people, you know, in the volume and with
Like the Unreal Engine kind of like, yeah.
Exactly.
So
Not yet.
I have a very direct question because I always wonder about this and I never found any information on this. How much does it cost to do virtual production?
A lot. I mean, you know, you have, it's a different way of thinking, I think, for productions in general, because you have to create the content ahead of time and you have to, so the schedules is going to go completely shift. Like, I wouldn't personally want to get into too much of a, you know, like unreal setup unless I knew that the production itself had the time, the resources, the budget, and also especially the schedule for it, you know, like, because you have to, it's a different way of working, I think.
I have like a question about like, have you been, do you know what disguise is or what notch is?
I mean, notch is that, so we use that codec for the wall, like Notch LC. Is that what you're talking about? So it's
I'm
a
talking about
codec.
like it's like a software package that lets you do like experiential reality stuff.
Mhm.
Have you guys done anything with that? Like, me and Oz were talking about this, how like
Right.
that's something that's kind of like happening that's very interesting, where
Yeah.
with real-time technology, you're able to do some pretty high-end stuff for events and for kind of like, um, I don't know what you'd even call it, like experiential visual effects, where like you do projections and you have screens for like events and things like that. And it's very sophisticated and very cool. And it's visual effects.
Yeah.
You know, it's like straight up visual effects. Like you're doing the same stuff. It's node based. Well, not just node based. Have you played with that? Are you interested in that anyway?
I mean, I am. It's really cool how visual effects can be used in very different, you know, mediums and outlets, and, you know, in museums, etc. And I am so, you know, kind of just in episodic and busy in episodic, and that's just like been my what I'm doing at the moment, and I haven't really delved into like any other like experiential designs or anything like that. I've been in episodic now, and we use some features as well for like, it's like 10 years. So I have not, you know, been in that, like, you know, I hear those, and I try to keep up, as I said earlier too. There's a lot of things happening within visual effects and like all different outlets, and it's important to try to keep up as, you know, good as possible, because things are ever changing. You know, we use Notch LC as like a codec that we exported our content for, because it was better for the wall that we used. You know, like and the wall, how it was set up for. That I mentioned earlier, when it was not used as like an experiential design element somewhere else, but it was used in episodic for a backdrop. So, you know, there's bits and pieces that always are going to creep in, and you're going to see everywhere. But yeah, that was my experience with Notch LC, just being a codec that fit the wall better.
Yeah. No, because I was curious. I was kind of like wondering about this, if there's like how much of a market there is in that. I mean, people do this. There are studios that do this exclusively.
Yeah.
But it does seem kind of new, and maybe
Yeah.
there's like something, like there's like an angle there to pursue.
And know everything. And we use Disguise too as like a setup for the wall to be able to switch between the various different settings and things like that. It was set up really nicely.
Do you guys do all of that? So how does that work like on set? Is that just like everything's real time? Like you guys literally are just like changing the effects?
No, well, I mean, I created the content, and then we have a playback person who, you know, handles the wall. But we set up the various different looks and settings and color settings and placement of this backdrop together. So we had like a lot of testing ahead of time before shooting, and worked together really closely with the DP. And we ended up, but I'm not the person physically that handles the wall, but we had to, you know, I learned all of that with him as well, Disguise and what worked best on that wall. But again, this was a very, you know, basic way to use that technology, in a sense that we did not have, you know, any kind of camera tracking to the wall. There was no 3D component to it. It was just content, shot footage that we used to create various different looks. But it ended up working really nicely. It'll be very.
Oz, I think I'm hogging all the questions. Do you want to ask questions?
No. I have your question already wrote down, so I'll just come in every now and then if I have to.
My last question usually is just like I want to ask what people's like prognoses are for. I don't know if that's a word. I don't know if prognoses is a word, but we're gonna stick. Well, I'm gonna go with it. Um, of like the future of kind of like post production and like digital media. Like if you had to Nostradamus this situation in like 5, 10 years from now, like what do you think your job is gonna look like? Like what do you think you're gonna be doing?
I mean, again, it's like I think on on an industry level, everything is going to keep on evolving, and I think that different technologies are going to be used in certain instances. I think that as we talked about, the remote working is going to be something more more common than it was, and that's going to happen fast. That's done, and we're going to keep on working remotely. I think I'm not very good as a fortune teller.
Like it's even more interesting if you usually don't try to like predict things. I'm even more
Yeah,
curious about that, like, cause so like if people, okay, so if people are working remotely, do you think things are gonna get more globalized?
I think so. I mean, we always have the thing that makes it tricky is the different tax incentives, that the production uses, and that is what hinders you from working globally all the time. Like I think that otherwise we would have already worked and been more spread out. But it's happening for sure. And I'm talking about globally within a company. It's already happening that people work globally. You see, companies that are like amazing visual effects companies in Spain and in Sweden and working on, big Hollywood movies and shows. And so global, like it's already happening globally.
Mhm.
I kind of was referring to within our company and within our projects, if it would happen globally. And I think that the only thing that maybe hinders that a little bit is the tax incentive, because if a
Mhm.
project has a tax incentive for New York, we have to adhere to
Yeah.
that and use New York artists.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it's easy to work now. For me, I don't see a difference working with our team in LA or a map painter in Sweden than somebody who is, probably like a borough away, and
Yeah.
now that's all the same. Time zones are different, but
How do
it's
you deal
definitely.
with, how do you feel about the time zone issue? Does that ever
Um,
bother you, like just having to navigate time zones?
No, you just have to get used to it. You just have to have a clock up that says and respect people's time zones, like, and know
Yeah.
when a good time is. But, again, I feel like it's easy to work with different time zones if you plan. Like, if you know that somebody's working when you're not working, you just have to be a step ahead of everything and a day ahead of them so that you won't ask them for something. Just it's all about planning and prepping.
Do you feel like it's easier to go, this is like oddly specific, do you think it's easier to go north, south, or east, west? Like, is it easier to have a project where you work 8 hours in like, Eastern time and then do 8 hours in like India? Or
Hmm.
where you do the same 8 hours, but one is in Canada and one's in Mexico or something like that, or Argentina. I don't know what the time zones are exactly.
But those wouldn't be big time zone differences, right? Like like if you go north south, they can be like an hour,
Yeah,
2 hours, 3 hours.
right. Like, is it easier, do you think, to like spread north south where the time zones are kind of packed close, or
Hmm.
do you go the exact opposite direction where you have one group of people work one day and then the night time, and basically there's like a night shift on the other side of the globe?
I think it depends. It depends on how you have your project set up. I think it's easier, obviously, to work everybody on the same time zone at some point of the day so that you guys can have a meeting and, as a team, you can come together and screen share and do things like that, which has kind of been my new way of trying to have some sort of dailies. But it's always, if you have other teams that work other hours, you have a 24-hour working, which is very efficient too.
Yeah.
Not fully 24 hours, but I think that I don't know. As somebody I used to do a show in LA, being in New York, and doing shows in New York, being in LA, and the time zones, you just have to plan for it. It doesn't, necessarily. I don't know which one I prefer, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking about that, like because it is kind of like it's almost like if you had to like plan those are the two kind of big strategies, it seems like to me, where like you can either try to completely plan for like this one area of overlap for a meeting, but
Mm-hmm.
there's actually two different time schedules, or you try to keep everybody in the same schedule,
Yeah.
while utilizing like the resource pool of like the different.
It's always easier if you have, at least at one point, we're all on the same time zone, so we can all get together. Or not the same time zone, but same schedule,
Yeah.
That's what I think. But again, it's all about planning and prepping and knowing what time it is. And
Yeah. Especially with virtual production.
What would Lotta like from the future of visual effect after this experience that you had this year? Like, what would you like to have in the future as a tool or something improved?
That's a good question. I mean, what I would like to continue to have is also like a little bit of, I think that a lot of people in these times are, really caring about making sure that they have time for themselves and a little bit more of a work-life balance. Like, I feel like that's something we talk about a lot. And I wish that continues to go in. Like, I don't think that it needs to always be as stressful as it can be, visual effects. I think that what else? I mean, there's a lot of technology that is not coming up because of COVID, but being brought to the forefront. I think that the working remotely, even though I'm not somebody who I miss the office, I think it's important for people that they're able to work remotely. It will make having families and having a life easier for a lot of people, especially in a country where you don't get any parental leave, really. So I think that it's I think, hopefully we can bring with us the acceptance of working remotely. I think we can bring with us a lot of the personal, like, work-life balance needs with us, and personal health too, and really make sure that we continue to care about that a lot. It's like one of those things. I talked to somebody about that recently too. It's, I used to go to work, even if I had the flu, because I had to, like you have to, like, you can't stay home. That's but it's important to care for your health and stop. And if you're sick, stay home, like we get reminded every day, do not go out. And hopefully that continues on even post-pandemic and post-COVID, that we just really care about our health a little bit more. Not visual effects. That doesn't even need to be visual effects related. Now I'm just, I think, talking about.
I see that in every industry. That's such a perfect place to end the interview.
Okay, good.
Right? I feel like it's like I want to applaud Oz for Oz for the perfect question to segue us out. Yeah. Thank you so much, Lotta, for talking with us. And,
Thank you. I hope I said something.